Today on Property Tribes TV, we're talking inventories, and I'm joined by Peter Tuoyo, who is the founder of Yellow Oak Inventories. So welcome to Property Tribes, Peter.
Hi.
Now, when it comes to asset management, I think an inventory is one of the most simple and obvious things that landlords can undertake. But there is a feeling on my part that perhaps they undervalue the inventory a little bit. What's your view?
Being a landlord myself, I was actually an inventory clerk before being a landlord, but obviously doing the job, I know the benefits of it. I think some landlords see it as an expense. It's not necessary because they've had tenancies that they've had no problems with. I guess it's one of those things that until it bites you, you possibly don't think about it, and then it's too late. So it's better to deal to have an inventory than not need it, than not having an inventory and need it, because at the end of the day, it can actually cost you way over the odds in putting things right.
Indeed.
For the sake of having a report done at the start of tenancy.
Quite, and I think what's so important about the inventory is it sets a benchmark for the start of the tenancy. So everybody in the transaction, the landlord, the tenant and the lettings agent, are very clear about the state and contents of the property at the start of the tenancy, and it's really a benchmark for the end of the tenancy. And if you don't have that, then as you said, if you go to a deposit dispute, you're really going to struggle.
Yes, I guess evidence is everything. You can't just rely on the written word and all the photos. A combination of both and an agreement from the tenant at the start, that sets it all in stone to say that when you moved in, this is how it was, you've agreed to it. And with our inventories, we give a 7-day amendment period, because obviously the tenant will pick up things that we can't by living in the property and testing all the appliances. I mean, an oven turning on, you may switch on, doesn't necessarily mean it's working.
Quite.
So tenant gets 7 days to test all these things and then come back to us and the agent to say these are the problems, and amendments will be made where necessary. After the 7-day period, because the document is signed at check-in, it is agreed that the tenant agreed this is what the property looked like when I move in. So at the end, any changes is attributed to the tenant.
And it's the inventory is actually fair to all parties, and I think that's an important point. It doesn't favour one party or the other. It's actually a very fair, transparent document. Now let's move on to the importance of mid-term property inspections, because to my mind, this is another area that people don't realise the value of. For instance, you contributed to a discussion on Property Tribes very recently about somebody that had fears that there was a brothel being run in their property.
Yeah.
If that individual had had mid-term property inspections factored in, then they probably would have flagged up something wasn't quite right at the beginning of the tenancy.
Yes. I think what would have happened in that situation, as I explained in the discussion, I worked for an estate agent at the time, so I sort of had a bit of background knowledge of who was actually in the property. So if there was a midterm inspection, it would have, red flags would have gone up, because one, the person who actually rented the flat wasn't resident in the flat, and condition. At the end of the tenancy, the condition wasn't great. So at midterm, it's likely some things would have happened, and questions could have been asked.
And it can be very useful with a mid-term property inspection to make sure that there's no subletting going on, and that the individuals on the tenancy agreement are the people that are actually residing in the property, because there's been quite a few cases recently where somebody's had a mid-term property inspection and found out that there were sort of 13 people living in a 2-bedroom flat.
Yeah, exactly. It flags all sorts of things up. If you have a 2-bedroom flat but suddenly there are 5 mattresses in there, it's you can put things together. You can even use the review to make a decision on whether you should renew the tenancy. Condition of the property is everything. Landlords want their properties to be protected and respected, And in my mind, midterm review along with the inventory is a no-brainer really, because you're protecting your investment. If you don't have a midterm and say you have a 3-year tenancy, something you could have prevented within the first year could end up being a whole huge problem at the end of 3 years.
Quite. Now, just as we come to the end here, Peter, have you had any sort of horror stories or interesting stories that have occurred in your work?
Over the last 5-6 years, yes. A very recent one last week, actually. I had to do a checkout for a landlord. They had an inventory, but the inventory was carried out a month into the tenancy. So how she gave the tenants the property wasn't reflected in the inventory because they'd lived there for a month. It was a case of they had 2 dogs, and the lack of respect. They'd only been in the property 6 months, and the amount of damage was just incredible. We're talking about animal waste on the floor, mold everywhere, rotting furniture, and all for the sake of lack of organization. I mean, she did the right thing getting an inventory, but you need to make sure you do it before the tenant moves in, and you need to make sure you have a check-in so the tenant can have things pointed out to them and they can actually sign in agreement. So the landlord now is in a position where she can't prove what the condition was like when she gave to the tenants. She can only prove what it was like a month into the tenancy. So that's a huge problem for her because she's at a loss.
Absolutely, and I think that's such a valid point, because without the inventory, any kind of tenancy deposit dispute is pretty much dead in the water. So you've just got to have one for the documentary evidence. So Peter, Yellow Oak, you tell us just where you operate and a little bit about your business just to finish.
Okay, we operate in London and the home counties north of London, so Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, East Oxfordshire, and Northampton. We are purely a property inventory company. We pride ourselves on how detailed our reports are and how efficient we are in our work. We are accredited by APIP and the AIIC because we feel that we need to, we're so confident in our work that we don't mind being held accountable. Our memberships for us shows that we take pride in what we do.
Indeed.
We to new clients, to agents, we offer a free inventory just to demonstrate our work, and to landlords who we work out a good pricing scheme. But as far as what we do, we feel we are as good as the best because of the experience we have. The company started in the last year, but the experience of inventories goes into years.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for contributing to Property Tribes, Peter. And if anybody would be interested in working with Peter, we're going to put his contact details below this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this insight into inventories with Peter from Yellow Oak Inventories. Thanks for watching.